Okay, welcome everybody. We are doing the Women's Leadership Collaborative Network meeting today for January, and our subject this month is starting your next chapter in 2021. This was sponsored by Citizens Bank, and today we're going to be talking with Lori Fazio, CEO at R.J. Julia Booksellers on Madison, and then Wesleyan R.J. Julia Bookseller on Main Street in Middletown. Before we start, I'm just going to go over some events that the Chamber is having over the next month. The first thing is actually the 2021 Middlesex Chamber Legislative Breakfast, which is actually this Friday, January 9th at 8:00 a.m. on Zoom. Head over to the Chamber website to register. Also, we have a Key Bank workshop coming up on February 9th, presented by yours truly, on the basics of web design. Again, you can head over to the Chamber website to register for that. And then we have another seminar in February from our Human Resource Seminar Series, which is called Self-Awareness and Adaptability. It's Tuesday, February 16th, 10 to 11 on Zoom, and it's presented by Maureen Ross, GEM at the Merge Leadership Academy, LLC. Okay, I will kick it over to Lori Fazio to start her presentation.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining today. I was thrilled to be asked to be a part of this. One, because I know you're such a great bunch of women on this group. And then two, I always love talking about books. So it's a nice combination. So what I thought I would do is I broke down, I have a lot of books, and I broke them down into three different subjects, and I'll go through them. If you have any particular questions about the book, you could put it in the chat. And I'll make sure to answer that. I think I'm going to have a little help from Haley on that. But if you have other general questions, if you want to wait till the end, I'm happy to answer any questions about either store, both stores, about me or positions or whatever you like. So I figure that's the best way to go about this. So the first group of books that I'm going to talk about are, great winter reads, but they're really great reads almost any time. And so I'm going to start, and I'm going to hold the title up. But again, I'm happy to answer questions, or if we get to the end of this and you want to ask about something or you want to email me, I can always tell you what I talked about if you don't remember the title. So the first book I'm going to talk about is called News of the World, and it's Paulette Giles. This book is actually not a new book. It's one of my favorites from several years ago. However, the reason why I wanted to talk about it is because there is a movie that just came out with Tom Hanks as the main character, and you can find that on demand as everything. It was in the movie theaters, I think, for a week, but now it is on demand. This is about, it's a relationship, really, and not in a good way. It is in a good way, between a man and this young girl in Texas. And this is after the Civil War. So it's during the Reconstruction. And this was at a time when literally people would go around. So Tom Hanks, his job is to go from town to town and read the news of the world. They didn't have time. They didn't have the money to read the newspapers. And so this is the way that they got all of their information. And there was a young girl who had been, her family was, slain and by the Indians. And she, I think it was the Kiowa clan, and they took her, and she was raised by them. And her goal now is to get back to her family, but she doesn't speak any English. And so it's about their relationship and the trials and tribulations along the way to get all the way down to San Antonio to return her to her aunt and uncle. And it's just fabulous. The book I find is always better, but the movie was really good. I did watch it. So something that, if you want to go back and read the paperback before you do the movie, I always advise that. The next book I'm going to talk about is called The End of the Day by Bill Clegg. A couple of years ago, he had a book out called How to Raise a Family. I'm sorry, Did You Ever Have a Family? And this is his second novel. He's actually an editor and in working in the publishing world. And so The End of the Day you're getting little glimpses of several different stories, and you don't really realize it, but they all come together and tie into one. Oh, why is it ringing through here? Is it ringing through there? Okay, that's not me. Okay, sorry about that. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So it's different stories, and you find out at the end how they're all connected. And it's from an event that actually takes place in southern Connecticut, and how they're all connected. You'll get the story of them. He's a great writer because he's done editing. The book, I always find one of my biggest complaints on books is that sometimes they're under edited, but he really did a good job of editing his own book. So that's a great one to sink your teeth into. The next one is called The Midnight Library, and this is by Matt Haig. And The Midnight Library, there's between life and death, there is a library. That's the opening line there. And it's about a young woman who finds this library, and she goes in and she finds that every book that she takes out, there's a story of what her life could have been like if she had made some changes. And so she's reading all of these stories, but time is running out, and she's got to decide which one should she be a part of. Should she go back and make some changes? Should she not play with fate and do that? So it's fascinating. It does tackle suicide, so it has some tough subjects in there, but it's really done well, and very sensitively, which is nice. But it is a deeper, darker book. So if that's not your thing, maybe not. Okay, let's talk about Disappearing Earth by Julia Phillips. This was a National Book Award finalist a couple of years ago. It's out fairly new in paperback now. It was one of my favorite books when it came out. This takes place on the Kamchatka Peninsula, which is the northeastern side of Russia. Which is, the author actually went and lived, she's like 27 years old. She went and lived there for years and really to get the culture and understand it. And it starts off by two little girls that go missing, but it isn't necessarily about that, although it does get back to that in the end. But it takes place over the course of a year, and each chapter is a month in the year. And again, you get different stories from different characters. And I love those kinds of books, if you can't tell, where it all ties together in the end of 6 degrees of separation, how they all kind of know each other. And so you're learning about all these different people and how these little girls are either a little or a lot involved in their lives. If you ever read Olive Kittredge years ago, it was the same sort of thing. Olive is in every chapter, but sometimes she's there as a main character, sometimes she's there just as a supportive character. So this is similar, and it's so well done. We're going to hear so much more from Julia Phillips. She is such a talented writer. I can't wait to see what she brings us next. All right, so I'm sure many of you either read or have heard of Where the Crawdads Sing, Delia Owens. And if you haven't, run down to either Madison or Middletown to RJ Julia's and get your copy. This book is still in hardcover, but it is worthwhile. This has been on the bestseller list for probably 2.5 years at this point, maybe close to 3. And it's just one of those books that everybody can read. The protagonist, she's a young girl, and she lives in the swamps down in North Carolina. And she just fends for herself. Her mother went off to kind of create a life, and she lives with her dad, but not really. He's not really the most supportive person to her. And her siblings have all gone off to create their own lives. And now she's got to, what is she going to do? And it's really amazing to see how this little girl teaches herself, and she knows so much about nature. So you get a lot of nature and plants and all that, and how she is really interested in the town that's nearby, but she kind of stays on the edge. It's just so well done. You'll feel the Spanish moss like dripping on you. You really get a sense that you are right there with this young girl as she grows. It's fascinating. It's a great book. Many of you probably know Margaret Atwood from Handmaid's Tale. But before she wrote any fiction, she was a poet. And so this is called Dearly, and it's new poems. And they're poems that basically touch everything, life, they touch actually aliens. There's all different kinds of poetry in here. And Margaret Atwood, she's a master writer of anything. So to get a collection of poetry from her right now is pretty special. In fact, we chose this as our signed first edition selection for January. We do have a signed first edition club, and our head buyer, our owner, Roxanne Cody, and myself, we actually pick the books, we hand pick them, we read them, and we get them signed, and you could be a part of that club if you'd like. Okay, so we're gonna talk, we're gonna move a little bit. So these are also great winter reads, but I'm gonna start moving us into Black History Month. So this is a very new book called The Prophets, and it's by Robert Jones Jr. The writing in this has been related to Toni Morrison's Song of Solomon or her book Beloved. It's the writing is kind of lyrical. This actually, he covers the voices very well of the enslaved as well as the slavers. And it's the main characters, they're gay slaves, and everything is just hunky-dory the way they're, as far as it can be. Their life is great, their relationship is great, they're there for each other. And then another slave, gets involved and kind of makes it, this is not a good thing, and the whole world is, actually turned upside down more than it is. So it's brand new, it's getting rave reviews. I haven't finished it yet, so I'm excited to get to that, but it's so well done. It's so well written. And I think these stories are important for us to read about, because I think getting the perspective is important for us to learn and grow as humans. I see that. The author is Robert Jones Jr. And then another one that I think is important is called Homegoing, and the author is Yagi Asi. This book is out in paperback. This came out several years ago. It was my favorite book the year that it came out. But she has a new book out right now called Transcendent Kingdom. So Ya was actually raised between Ghana and Georgia, US. And she spent her life going back and forth. So she's got a lot of, roots back in history. And Homegoing actually starts out in Ghana, and it's two half sisters that never meet each other, never know each other. One, her father gets married off into the slave runner, and the other one gets kidnapped by slave runners. So one is actually the wife living in a castle, and the other is living in the basement or the dungeons of the castle. And they never know each other. And what you do is you get their lineage in each chapter. It takes turns. You get their lineage through the years, all the way up to and including current time. So it's just stunning. It's really, really good. And her new one, Transcendent Kingdom, actually pulls in some science. It also has a little bit of Ghana history in there. And I don't know, she's also a young writer who anything she writes, I will get in my hands and read. She's brilliant. Okay, is this pace okay for everybody? Doing okay? Okay, great.
Yep.
All right. So I want to move, more into some nonfiction for Black History Month. And so the first one I'm going to talk about is His Truth is Marching On. This is John Lewis and the Power of Hope. This is written by John Meacham, who's a Pulitzer Prize winner, and he tells the story of John Lewis, and he really has done. John Meacham does a ton of research for his books. We love John Meacham. His books, any of his books are fabulous, but especially with the passing of John Lewis, this really brings you there. He's gets you on, the history leading up to the march, and then it gives you the march, and it's really put together nicely. You really get a lot of history, and you get the background, and just done very well. And the afterword of this book actually was done by John Lewis, which is pretty special. Okay, so then we've got The Dead Are Arising. So this is the life of Malcolm X. There's really not much more to say about this. This won the National Book Award in 2019, and the author Les Payne is the winner of the Pulitzer Prize. So, and I don't really in this, but if you want the true history where he dove in for years and years to really give a nice, thorough history of Malcolm X, that's going to be a great choice. It's rave reviews, obviously won the National Book Award. So it's just fantastic. So then I also thought this was an important one. And there's a ton of books out like this. I couldn't talk about them all. But Me and White Supremacy. So this is by Layla F. Said. And Layla actually did an Instagram challenge called #Me and White Supremacy. And she wanted to see what kind of reactions she would get. And it took off. I mean, and it really, she was so surprised that she decided to go and write this book and become a teacher of white supremacy. So actually it's based on some workshops that she ran. And it's a great thing for us to read as individuals. You can read it with your family. If you're a teacher, you can bring it to your classroom. She gives you steps of how to really dive into it and take a deep look at white supremacy, because it's not something that is taken lightly, clearly, by some people, and it's taken too lightly by others, I personally think. But you don't really understand the depth of it until you go through, these chapters and these pages, and you see like, wow, it's very eye-opening. It's really, really eye-opening. And again, it could be done for yourself. It could be done for family, classroom, book, a book club, which we'll talk about at the end. Yeah, okay. Fight of the Century. So Michael Chabon, who's a writer, and Ayelet Waldman put this together. And so these are writers reflect on 100 years of landmark ACLU cases. And I'm going to read you some of the contributors because it's pretty interesting. Actually, Yagi Asi, who we just talked about with Homegoing, she's in here, and she does Brown versus the Board of Education of Topeka. You've got Danielle Handler, who contributes. That's Lemony Snicket, for those of you who don't know. You've got Ann Patchett. You've got Jacqueline Woodson. You've got Geraldine Brooks, Meg Wolitzer, Elizabeth Strout, Salman Rushdie contributes, Scott Turow. I mean, I could go on and on. There's like 30 to 40 writers that actually go and review some of these cases. So it gives you a more current look and perspective of some very important cases in the ACLU. Okay, so I gotta quickly touch on, and I'll talk about two, but children's books and young adult books. So I brought two young adult books that I'll mention in a minute, but we have all kinds of books for every age. And I was talking with our children's book buyer and asking her when I was going over this, what could I talk about and what should I talk about? And one of the things that we got down to was that sometimes it's easier to understand and easier for kids to kind of really, dive into something when they're reading about someone else's story. Because a lot of this is, pretty serious and it's pretty harsh. So sometimes getting them a book, even if it's not a nonfiction book, getting them a fictional book that tells a story can introduce them to someone else's story in a gentle, maybe isn't the right word, but an easier way to get them involved, to teach them. And that's why a lot of kids, we used to get parents who would ask us, and we still do, why does my teenager read all of these books about angst and depression and this and that? And, 13 Reasons Why, which became a Netflix, phenomenon. Why did they want to read about it? Well, because they're reading about someone else's story. So it's for them to kind of understand and I'm happy more about that with any of you individually, if you'd like, because, you want to be careful and you want to make sure that they're not reading above their understanding, and their comprehension level. Because we also get people come in and they say, well, my child is 10, but they're reading on a 14-year-old's level. Well, but you don't really want to give them a book that has 14-year-old content. And that's what, we're happy to talk about it in the bookstores all day long. Come in and say, this is where my child reads, but I'd like them to learn about this, or they want to read about this. What do you suggest? So I just wanted to quickly touch on that because we're pretty careful about what we put in the hands of our readers. But the two young adult books that I want to talk about are both by the same author, Angie Thomas. And so the first one, and you may have heard of it, The Hate You Give. And this came out a few years ago, and it was made into a movie, which was very well done. And this is about the main character. Her name is Star, and she witnesses the murder of her best friend, Khalil. And how she struggles with this, because her life is in two different very worlds. One, she goes to a prestigious prep school because she's really smart and she was able to get in, but she lives and she's grown up in this area of trouble. And she's in the car leaving a party, and things happen, and she witnesses, like I said, the death of her best friend. So she's struggling with it. The second book, which just came out, which is already getting great praise, is called Concrete Rose. This is actually a prequel to The Hate You Give. This is 17 years prior to the things that happened in The Hate You Give. So you really are getting an understanding of these families and how they came to be at the place that they were. Again, these are young adult books. A lot of adults like to read young adult books, especially when they're really well written. These two, I can say, fall into that category. They're a great crossover book for anyone who likes to do that. And it's not like you're reading, anything below, you're an adult, you can read young adult. I love reading young adult. There's some great books that teach us things. They're just entertaining. They're really well written. So I just wanted to make sure. That author is Angie Thomas. She wrote The Hate You Give and Concrete Rose. And you don't have to read one to read the other. And again, she wrote The Hate You Give first, but Concrete Rose takes place 17 years earlier. Okay, so now I want to talk about books that are great for women and women empowerment, because, that's who we are. And this group clearly gets together for reasons of these natures. So, and you might not be surprised, but Kamala Harris clearly right now is in a position that is great for all women, great for color, great for everything that we as women believe in. So, this is the truths we hold in American Journey. This is actually her story. We have so many books out. Some are, by Kamala. Many are about Kamala. And so I just wanted to make sure I started out with that, because there's a lot that we can read about as she, basically has, broken the glass ceiling right now. And again, I have 3 daughters. And so I always try to empower them. There's always something you can reach for. There's always something you can be. And now what a great example for so many, young girls. And again, of all color. It's just fantastic. The next book I want to talk about is Dare to Lead. And this is by Brene Brown. Many of you may have heard of Brene. She has many books out. She does a lot of talks, and she's very inspirational. Her books are, a lot of psychologists and psychiatrists use her books. A lot of workshops for women empowerment use her. This is Dare to Lead, Brave Work, Tough Conversations, Whole Hearts. And I love that, when you open the flap to this, the first thing that she says is, leadership is not about titles, status, and wielding power. A leader is anyone who takes responsibility for recognizing the potential in people and ideas and has the courage to develop that potential. How great, because a lot of times when we talk about leadership, people think it's, you can only be a leader if you're the boss. You can only be a leader if you run everything. And that's actually not what it is. So I loved it. And then, she tells you about the book. And then the question is, how do you cultivate braver, more daring leaders? And how do you embed the value of courage in your culture? So I love anything by her. I think she's so empowering. She's so inspirational. Lots of quotes. You can find quotes by her. I am queen of the quotes. If you don't believe me, you could ask any of my kids. They will tell you that I just love, waking up and having something that makes you feel good about who you are and you get going during the day. If you're having a tough time, I think it's so important, for me anyway. Not everybody does it with quotes, but I think it's such a great thing. And speaking of inspirational, so I have Untamed by Glennon Doyle. This is new, a couple of months old. And Glennon Doyle, she wrote Love Warrior. She wrote Warrior Child. She started with a blog, like a mommy blog, and realized that people did want to hear her voice about how things are tough and you can wake up and, realize that, your day as a mom was not what you thought it was going to be. So her, she finds herself and she actually talks about that. She wasn't perfect. She was an alcoholic. She abused drugs. She was promiscuous and she was married. So she really found herself and her voice and started to become someone who empowered other women by just being real and being okay with who she was. And Untamed is, there's already over 1 million copies of this book that have been sold. It's been out for, a few months. And this is about, again, finding who you are and being okay with it and just putting it out there, believing in yourself and moving forward. Okay, I've got 2 more. I actually haven't read these yet, but I think they're important books and they've gotten great reviews. And they're in my very large pile of to be read books. So Ladies Get Paid. And this is by Claire Wasserman. And this is the ultimate guide to breaking barriers, owning your worth, and taking command of your career. Again, about empowering yourself. And what I love about these kind of books, and the next one I'm going to talk about as well, is that you don't have to sit down and read this cover to cover. You can read one chapter at a time. You can pick and choose the chapters that you get into. But it's about taking control of your own destiny. And then the last one is How to Lead, Wisdom from the World's Greatest CEOs, Founders, and Game Changers. And David Rubenstein put this together. So you could see right on the cover, you've got people that you may recognize. You've got Oprah Winfrey, you've got RBG, you've got Bill Gates. So it's not just about women, but it gives wisdom from a lot of these people. And I think, again, when you read about leading, whenever you read about, moving to another level, I think that it's important. And again, this is one of those books that you can read a chapter at a time. You can pick and choose, the lesson that you want to learn or the tips that you want to read about or whatever that is. So I think those are 2 good choices. I haven't read them, like I said, but I feel that they're good ones to talk about. So before I open it up to questions, one of the things that I was also asked to talk about was how our book clubs run in the stores. And I think that there's a book club being, tossed around and maybe starting your own book club. And so the way that our book clubs run in the store, so we've got two different ways. One is the Madison store particularly, and the Middletown store is starting out this, but the Madison store has some book clubs that are already established. We call them our in-house book clubs, but they don't meet in the bookstore right now because, it's just too many people in the store. So they meet remotely. But there's a classics book club. There's an indies book club. There's a men's book club. There's an indie best of book club. There's new writers, debut authors. So there's all different kinds that they pick the books that they're going to read. They purchase the books here, and they're led by somebody, not necessarily from the store, but they meet every month. Anybody can join those book clubs. We have them listed on the website. You could call. That's the Madison store. And again, we're going to be starting up this year some book clubs like that. Then there's also, which is if you started your own book club, we have that as well, where you can register your book club with us. We will help you make recommendations if you'd like. We're happy to talk to you once in a while if you'd like, or not. It's really however much you want us to be involved, we can be. And you can purchase your books through us. And if 5 or more people from your book club, buy the books from us, if it's a hardcover book, we give you 20% off. If it's a paperback book, we give you 15% off. We just ask that you give us the title enough time ahead that, at least 30 days, or we can order for you. A lot of book clubs will pick like 3 months at a time. And, again, we're happy to give you reading group guides, starter conversations or questions, make suggestions on books that you might want to read, however much or little you would like us to get involved. All right, I'm going to stop talking and take some questions if there's questions. And again, happy to answer whatever you'd like.
Okay, there was a question about receiving the listing of authors and books from this.
Yep.
If you can get that over to Kathy or myself, we can send that over to everyone.
Definitely. I can do that for sure.
And then someone asked, who are the authors that write just good humorous fiction? Sometimes you just need a good laugh.
Yep. So I almost brought some of those. So there's a new book out by Jerry Seinfeld called Is This Anything? And basically, I guess Is This Anything is a line that they use amongst each other when they're trying out a new bit to see if it's something that they should move forward with. It's hilarious. And I just, I laugh, on every page of that sort of thing. There's also, oh my goodness, I'm drawing a blank on his name. I don't know how I could draw a blank on his name. Oh gosh, I can see the titles of all of his books. Chipmunk Loves Squirrel. Sedaris, David Sedaris. So David Sedaris is a great author that you just laugh at. There's a new book out that's partly done by one of the New Yorker contributors and Steve Martin, and yes, the actor Steve Martin. And so there's, a cartoon, and then there's a caption. That's how it's called. A Wealth of Pigeons. That was one of our holiday selections we couldn't keep in the store. It's really, really funny. Then there's an author, Tina Fey, if you like Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, they've got some great books out that you can read. There's a great fiction book called This Is Where You Leave Me. Oh my gosh. I'll have to look up the name of the author. Oh, Tropper, Jonathan Tropper. Wow. I'm going to pat myself on the back today. That's a very funny book as well. So there's lots of humorous. And we have a humor section in the store too. So. Any other, Haley?
I'm on mute. Lauren Middleton asked if there are any horror authors that you recommend.
I don't read horror, but you could talk to many booksellers in the store and they will recommend horror. I mean, I've never read a Stephen King book. It's not my thing. I don't want to be reading at night and then be afraid to fall asleep. So, but so many people love horror. I will read some mystery. That's a little bit different. So I don't know that I could particularly, but I will say like Joe Hill, you know, is one that people, you know, talk about here as a writer of horror. Geez, that's a stump, but really anybody in the store can help you with horror. It's not my thing. I don't want to be afraid in my own house.
Thank you.
I'm not seeing any more questions come through.
Okay.
Anyone have anything you'd like to add or any questions?
Oh, Lori Lodge.
Okay, yeah, hi.
Hi.
I just want to put in a plug for RJ. My daughter is a member of a book club and we've been we have been patrons of RJ Julia's since the day we moved to Medicine. And they're really great. If you're having a hard time getting your hands on a book, they'll get it for you. She was having a hard time getting her hands on, I think, a couple recent books for her book clubs, and they ordered them and sent them to her. So, you know, that's another great service that they provide.
Thanks, Lori.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
we've been, you know, the pandemic, you know, has obviously been interesting on the bookstore, and you know, I'm going to knock wood as I say this. I can't stress enough how grateful we are. We were so supported in 2020, and so far it seems to be the same way starting off for 2021. And we do ship. We've got a great online presence. We have online events, you know, because everything is virtual right now. It's, you know, we'll get you books as fast as we can. You know, there have been shortages with printing during the pandemic, and that started even a little before the pandemic with the shortages of paper and all of that. So, but you know, we'll do the best we can to get you what you need.
Great.
Other questions? No. I will tell you, you know, a couple of years ago, I had a customer come in and she was looking around and she seemed, you know, like she would go from one bookcase to the other and not really focusing on anything. And I said, well, what can I help you find? And she talked to me in a very quiet voice and she said, I'm kind of embarrassed. And I said, well, all right. And she said, I haven't read a book in a very long time. And I want to get back into reading and I don't even know where to begin. And I'm so embarrassed. And I said, there's nothing, you came to the right place. And I put a book in her hands and I said, this is one of my favorite books. And I said, it's a lighthearted book. I said, but it gives you some meat and it's easy, you know, to read. It's not super literary where you're going to be, you know, feeling like you don't understand what's going on. And I said, why don't you give this a try? And she came back in about 2 weeks later and threw her arms around me. I can't do that right now, and gave me a hug. And she said, that was unbelievable. What else do you have for me? And, you know, those are the stories that, you know, we love to help people. If you're stuck and you don't know what to read, tell me a little bit about yourself, or any of the booksellers. This is what they're masters of. You know, what was the last book that you loved, or what do you like to do in your free time? And, you know, we'll find something to put in your hands, even if it's any of the books I talked about today. If none of those resonate with you, there are plenty more that, you know, that we could recommend to you. So, you know, we consider ourselves the experts because we do a lot of reading. You know, we read books before they come out generally. so that we can, be up on, something that's popular right now. And so if you've already read something last year, what can we recommend this year? Or so, let us do that for you.
I'm not seeing any other questions. Lauren, do you have anything, or Kathy, anything?
The only thing I forgot to announce when we first started was the event for February is going to be a yoga-based event. We're actually going to have a person from Lemon Orchards talking about yoga golf, but you don't have to be a golfer. And then we're actually having some laughter yoga with Maylene, laughter yoga for the Buttonwood Tree on Main Street in Middletown. So that was just a tidbit I forgot, and we should be announcing that date soon.
Okay, if no one has anything else, thank you all for coming, and thank you, Lori.
Thank you for having me. Nice to see everybody. Stay well.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Have
Lori.
a good day.
Thank you.
See you, Lori.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Great job.